Good News is the new debut album from rapper and singer Megan Thee Stallion. This new album comes as essentially the culmination of an insane 18 or so months for Megan Thee Stallion, with her rising from relative obscurity to consistently topping the charts. As soon as she dropped her mixtape Fever last spring, she has been on a consistent, accelerated upward trajectory. Hot Girl Summer, of course, turned into one of the biggest viral hits of last summer, but that song was just a sign of things to come. In 2020 alone, she has had two of the biggest selling songs of the year in Savage and WAP, and it's not hard to see why. Her swagger, her charisma, her confidence, her straight to the point, sexually positive lyrics are all very easy to get on board with. It was only a matter of time before herself and her team had to capitalize on this insane popularity, and that has materialized in this new album. As expected, this project is a star-studded affair with appearances from the likes of Beyonce, SZA, Young Thug, DaBaby, just to name a few. From a production standpoint as well, you've got more superstars behind the scenes in the shape of Tay Keith, Juicy J, Scott Storch, Buddha Bless, Mustard. Everything about this album points to it being an expensive project. And the result is, quite frankly, a relatively mixed bag. The album opens with the song Shots Fired, which is essentially a savage, if you pardon the pun, savage decimation of Tory Lanez over an updated version of Biggie's Who Shot Ya beat. She quite openly and with an amazing sense of humor about it addresses the shooting incident that happened earlier on in the summer and does the musical equivalent of essentially brushing the dirt off of her shoulders. The lyrics on this track are scathing, hilarious, and very witty. And the Who Shot Ya sample is, of course, perfect for more than just one way. And I do think this is one of the better diss songs I've heard in 2020. In a stark contrast to how Tory Lanez chose to address this whole shooting situation, he devoted pretty much his entire last album to maintaining his so-called innocence, whereas Megan on this album just spent the first song quickly addressing it and swiftly moving on to the things she actually wants to talk about. Now, I feel what happens a lot of the time with debut albums is artists want to show their audience that they're not just a one-trick pony and they try and step out of their comfort zones on a couple of tracks. And that does happen on Good News, and I think it happens to varying degrees of success. The song Intercourse with Mustard and Popcorn isn't any new territory for Megan Thee Stallion lyrically, but stylistically, it's a dancehall-inspired, much slower song as opposed to the loud, fast-paced trap beats that she used to rapping over. I do quite enjoy Mustard's beat, I enjoy Popcorn's hook, and even Megan's flow and delivery on the majority of the song, but lyrically, it's kind of a dud. Don't Rock Me to Sleep has her singing over very heavily inspired 80s beat, and it's much more of an overt pop song than I've heard from her previously. I do like the subtler approach to intimacy and relationships, and her singing is pretty good on most of the song, but in parts it does get a bit shaky. Maybe I'm being biased towards the whole 80s synth pop sound because it's a kind of music that I already love so much already, but I do think this is one of the strongest songs on the album, and definitely a strong contender for a possible single release. Of course, Megan is in her bag most when she's being sexually positive and upfront about her lyrics and being positive about her body and the bodies of other women as well. And you do get a lot of that on this album. Freaky Girls with SZA is a very steamy R&B banger, and I think SZA absolutely kills the hook. And there's a lot to love in this particular song. Unfortunately, what is hard to love is the next track on the album, which is the song Body. Now, I do genuinely really enjoy the beat. I love how simple it is and how dark it is and the strange female moaning samples going throughout as well. I love how dark and aggressive it is, and on the verses, she is most definitely flowing. Lyrically, it's all about her self-confidence and the confidence she has within her own body. And it's essentially a boasting track in the same manner that a male rapper might boast about his jewelry or his cars. But what makes this song genuinely unlistenable is the hook, the bada yada 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 is maybe one of the most irritating hooks I have ever heard, and it pushes it into that realm of being completely unlistenable. And I find that to be such a massive shame, because the rest of the song, all of the other aspects that went into the song, are pretty solid. Cry Baby with DaBaby is again not the strongest song on the album. The sample, the crying baby sample, is quite nauseating, if I'm being honest. The beat is so simple that it kind of becomes boring after about a minute or two, and Megan nor DaBaby brings anything particularly interesting lyrically. And that's what I think is the one major downside to this album. So many of these tracks are essentially interchangeable with one another, and they kind of just blend into an anonymous, bland listen. And I think that is a shame, because there are definitely some real standout tracks on here. They just get buried in quite a big pile of mediocrity. Towards the end of the album, we get the song Outside, and I think this is one of those songs that delivers on the potential promised by previous tracks. Megan does her singing/rapping thing, that's of course very popular now, over a much slower beat, and provides a genuinely engaging portrayal and explanation of why and how she has so much self-confidence. And I do think it's a genuinely very well produced and written song. It's got very witty bars, it's got a catchy hook, it's got a different kind of beat, and most importantly, it has something to say. Of course, the Savage remix with Beyonce is on this album as well, and there's a reason that this version of the song went to #1. That's because it's featuring Beyonce, and a Beyonce feature is basically a cheat code. Beyonce literally does the most on this feature. You get every version imaginable of Beyonce on this song, and I think she does it so much that she kind of overshadows Megan Thee Stallion on her own song. The album ends with another song that dropped prior to the release of the album, and that's Don't Stop with Young Thug. And I think this is the song, more so than any of the others on the album, that really sticks out like a sore thumb. Mainly because the beat is so left field in comparison to the rest of the beats on the album. It's not really drawing from R&B or hip hop or dancehall. It's drawing much more from like electronic and industrial music, and it's the kind of instrumental you can imagine someone like Rico Nasty rapping over. I do believe that if this album was as bold and out there and daring and willing to take risks as this particular song is, it would have made for a far more enjoyable and varied listen. Nonetheless, Good News is not the worst thing in the world. It's far from being one of the worst albums of the year or anything like that. It's just a bit safe and calculated for my liking, at least. But I can see the appeal, and I can see that there is some real talent in there. And there are some genuinely very good songs buried in there as well. Those are my thoughts on the album. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think. Make sure to like, subscribe, and dong the bell. And I shall see you next time.